Yesterday was a deadline day in Australia's marriage equality debate. The final day people could enrol or update their details to be registered for the same-sex marriage postal survey. Christine Forster, Sydney City Council member and sister of former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, has been a key marriage equality advocate. She joined me in the studio a little earlier, and also talking to us was Lyle Shelton from the No Camp. He's with the Australian Christian Lobby.
This postal plebiscite, this people's vote, is an opportunity for all Australians to have their say on whether or not freedoms should change in Australia and be inhibited, as they will if the marriage law changes, and whether or not their children should be taught radical LGBTIQ sex education in schools, such as what the Safe Schools program is.
There's a lot of people have been pulling you up on that and saying that you're broadening this to bring up a whole lot of stuff that's not what it's really about. It's simply about whether marriage should be allowed between same-sex couples.
Well, any change in the law, Joe, has consequences, and we've now got three people from the yes side: Alex Greenwich, a key leader in Christine's camp, Bill Shorten, the opposition leader, and today Senator James Paterson, all acknowledging that there are consequences to freedom as a result of changing the marriage law.
And those freedoms will be dealt with in the federal parliament legislation after this vote goes through. If it is successful, those protections will be granted in that legislation.
Will they? I mean, what's been put forward by Senator Dean Smith is very narrow protection for professional clergy only. Bill Shorten has acknowledged that cake makers and wedding service providers also are under threat, as they have been in America. There's a grandmother before the US Supreme Court at the moment for alleged bigotry. The Swedish Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven, has said that priests in Sweden who don't want to solemnise same-sex marriages should get another job. We can't trust the politicians to protect this broad range of freedoms that will be affected as a result, and we can't trust them to make sure parents have the right to withdraw their children and keep them protected from radical LGBTIQ sex education programs.
Let's hear from Christine Forster now. Christine, what do you make of what Lyle Shelton's had to say there, and why isn't a civil union enough for you?
Well, marriage is defined by legislation, and it's a secular institution in Australia. It's not a religious institution. It's defined by federal legislation. The only question people are going to be asked in the upcoming postal ballot is, do you agree that that right to marry should be extended to all Australians? That's simply what we're going to be asked, and that's the issue that people need to think about. And I encourage everybody, as many Australians as possible, to participate in the ballot when they get their papers.
And we can see that from Lyle Shelton's answer what the approach of the No Camp is going to be as this campaign continues over the coming weeks. And what do you make of the approach of bringing all those other issues in?
Well, they're just simply not relevant. It's a question of whether or not you agree with changing the Marriage Act. Now, the draft legislation that Dean Smith has prepared very clearly protects the right of religious ministers to opt out if they choose to, and that will protect their rights. I mean, if Virginia and I turned up at our local Catholic church wanting to get married and the priest there said no, that would be the end of it. It won't change. It doesn't have any impact in whatsoever on the teachings of the church, and to say that it does is simply scaremongering.
Lyle Shelton, did you cheer on Ian Thorpe and take pride in his achievements at multiple Olympic Games?
Yeah, of course. I think Ian Thorpe's a great Australian and a great athlete. But
and so
what we're talking about here,
what right do you have to participate in that joy and take national pride in those achievements if you now deny him the right to feel like an equal and experience the joy of marriage?
Well, I wouldn't want anyone to not feel like an equal, and there is equality under the law in Australia for all people, same-sex or not.
Can you see that people may see there is an inconsistency and a hypocrisy in your approach there if you feel like you can celebrate the joys of achievements of LGBTIQ people at one level and then deny them a feeling of equality on another?
I can celebrate the achievements of all Australians. Their sexual identity is not relevant to those achievements.
Christine Forster, no supporters, including your brother, argue that this is an attack on the foundation stone upon which society is built. Do you see where they're coming from with that?
Well, it's something that will expand the ability of people to participate in that wonderful institution, which we all acknowledge is the bedrock of our society. at the moment, the reality is that a proportion of the population is excluded from that institution because under the law we do not have equality. We are not able to get married under the law. This is simply a question about a fair go for every Australian and to include more people in the wonderful club that is marriage. Why would you want to exclude people? We all acknowledge that marriage is a special relationship. It defines families. It binds families, communities, countries together. And we just want more people to be able to access that great thing.
Christine Forster and Lyle Shelton there.